Question 1. Analysis of the ethical responsibilities of an individual involved in the Ihya Islamic University entrance examination process when a close relative is among the applicants, considering the university's commitment to fair and merit-based admissions. Option A. To ensure the relative is evaluated strictly according to the established Ihya Islamic University entrance examination regulations and admissions criteria, without any preferential treatment or undue influence. Option B. To advocate for the relative's admission to colleagues involved in the admissions committee, highlighting their familial relationship and personal qualities. Option C. To discreetly share parts of the examination paper with the relative before the official examination date. Option D. To subtly provide the relative with hints or guidance on the types of questions that might appear on the exam to help them prepare better. The correct answer is A. To ensure the relative is evaluated strictly according to the established Ihya Islamic University entrance examination regulations and admissions criteria, without any preferential treatment or undue influence. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma faced by individuals involved in university admissions, particularly in the context of an entrance exam like that for Ihya Islamic University. The challenge lies in balancing the integrity of the admissions process with personal relationships and the potential for perceived unfairness. Maintaining impartiality and adhering strictly to established university regulations are paramount to upholding the credibility of Ihya Islamic University and ensuring a merit-based selection process. The correct approach involves a strict adherence to the Ihya Islamic University's stated entrance examination regulations and admissions policies. This means evaluating all candidates, including relatives, solely on their performance in the examination and their fulfillment of other objective admission criteria. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the principles of fairness and equal opportunity, which are fundamental to any reputable educational institution. Specifically, it upholds the university's commitment to transparency and meritocracy, ensuring that admission is based on academic potential rather than personal connections. This aligns with the implicit ethical duty of all university staff to act in the best interest of the institution and its student body. An incorrect approach would be to offer preferential treatment or to subtly influence the evaluation process for a relative. This constitutes a breach of ethical conduct and potentially violates university policies regarding conflicts of interest and fair admissions. Such actions undermine the integrity of the examination and the university's reputation, creating an environment where favoritism is perceived to outweigh merit. This can lead to the admission of less qualified candidates, thereby diminishing the academic standards of the university and fostering resentment among other applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to disclose confidential examination materials or to provide advance information about the exam to a relative. This is a severe ethical and regulatory violation, compromising the security and fairness of the entire examination process. It directly contravenes the principles of academic integrity and can have serious consequences for both the individual involved and the university. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination regulations and code of conduct. When faced with a potential conflict of interest, such as a relative applying for admission, the professional should 1. Identify the potential conflict of interest, 2. Consult the relevant university policies and regulations regarding admissions and ethical conduct, 3. Recuse oneself from any part of the decision-making process that directly involves the relative, if such involvement is unavoidable, 4. Prioritize the integrity of the admissions process and the university's reputation above personal relationships, 5. Seek guidance from a supervisor or the appropriate university ethics committee if there is any ambiguity or doubt about the correct course of action. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that an applicant preparing for the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam has access to a comprehensive set of official past papers and recommended reading materials. The applicant is unsure whether they are permitted to refer to these materials during the actual examination to clarify specific concepts or verify information. What is the most appropriate course of action for the applicant to ensure compliance with the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Seek explicit clarification from the Ihya Islamic University's admissions or examination department regarding the permitted use of these materials during the entrance exam. Option B. Assume that referring to official past papers and recommended reading materials is permissible for clarification during the exam, as they are university-sanctioned resources. Option C. Proceed with referring to the past papers and reading materials, reasoning that their official nature implies their acceptability as study aids during the assessment. Option D. Consult with senior students or alumni of Ihya Islamic University to gauge their understanding of the rules regarding the use of such materials during the entrance exam. The correct answer is B. Assume that referring to official past papers and recommended reading materials is permissible for clarification during the exam, as they are university-sanctioned resources. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic integrity within the specific context of Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination. The core challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to fair assessment with the applicant's desire to present their qualifications effectively, while strictly adhering to the examination's stipulated rules. Misinterpreting or disregarding these rules can lead to severe consequences, including disqualification and damage to the applicant's reputation. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict adherence to the Ihya Islamic University entrance exams guidelines regarding the use of external resources. This approach prioritizes academic honesty and the integrity of the examination process. Specifically, it requires the applicant to rely solely on their own knowledge and understanding, as explicitly stated or implied by the exam's rules. This aligns with the ethical principle of fairness in assessment, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on their individual merit without undue advantage. Regulatory justification stems from the university's established examination framework, which implicitly or explicitly prohibits cheating or the use of unauthorized aids to maintain the validity and credibility of its entrance process. An incorrect approach that involves consulting unauthorized study guides or notes during the examination would be a direct violation of the exam's integrity. This constitutes academic dishonesty, undermining the principle of fair competition and potentially providing an unfair advantage over other candidates. The regulatory failure here is the breach of the university's examination regulations, which are designed to ensure a level playing field. Another incorrect approach, such as seeking assistance from a peer or tutor during the exam, also represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This not only violates the rules against collaboration, but also compromises the assessment of individual knowledge and skills. The university's regulations are designed to test the applicant's independent capabilities, and such an action directly contravenes this objective. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a comprehensive review of all examination rules and guidelines provided by Ihya Islamic University. This should be followed by a clear understanding of the ethical implications of each rule. When faced with uncertainty, the professional approach is to seek clarification from the examination authorities rather than making assumptions that could lead to a violation. The ultimate goal is to uphold academic integrity and ensure that all actions taken are in full compliance with the established framework. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that the Ihya Islamic University Entrance Examination Committee is reviewing applications. One applicant has submitted a transcript with a minor formatting inconsistency in the grading scale, which does not appear to affect the overall academic merit, but deviates from the precise format specified in the university's entrance examination guidelines. The committee is considering how to proceed. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and professionally sound approach for the committee to adopt in this situation, strictly adhering to the Ihya Islamic University's regulatory framework for entrance examinations? Option A. Accept a verbal assurance from the applicant regarding the grading scale, without requiring formal submission of a corrected document or further verification. Option B. Thoroughly review the applicant's submitted documentation against the explicit criteria outlined in the Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination regulations, ensuring all submitted items meet the defined standards for a fair and equitable evaluation. Option C. Make an exception for this applicant based on their strong extracurricular achievements, despite the formatting inconsistency in their academic transcript. Option D. Overlook the minor discrepancy in the applicant's transcript, assuming it does not significantly impact their academic standing, to expedite the review process. The correct answer is B. Thoroughly review the applicant's submitted documentation against the explicit criteria outlined in the Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination regulations, ensuring all submitted items meet the defined standards for a fair and equitable evaluation. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and transparent admissions process. The admissions committee must adhere strictly to the Ihya Islamic University's established entrance examination regulations, which are designed to ensure a standardized and equitable evaluation of all applicants. Misinterpreting or deviating from these regulations, even with good intentions, can lead to accusations of bias, unfairness, or procedural impropriety, undermining the credibility of the admissions process and the university itself. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation against the explicit criteria outlined in the Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination regulations. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the principle of procedural fairness and adherence to established rules, which are foundational to any credible examination process. Specifically, the regulations likely stipulate clear requirements for academic transcripts, standardized test scores, if applicable, and any other supporting documents. By meticulously checking each submitted item against these defined standards, the committee ensures that all applicants are judged on the same predetermined criteria, thereby upholding the integrity and impartiality of the entrance examination. This is ethically sound, as it treats all applicants equally and prevents arbitrary decision-making. An incorrect approach of overlooking a minor discrepancy in the applicant's transcript, assuming it does not significantly impact their academic standing, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to the principle of strict compliance with regulations. The regulations are in place to ensure a uniform standard for all. Even a seemingly minor deviation can set a precedent for future leniency, potentially leading to a compromised admissions process. Ethically, this approach introduces an element of subjective judgment where objective criteria should prevail, risking unfairness to other applicants who meticulously met all requirements. Another incorrect approach of accepting a verbal assurance from the applicant regarding a missing document without requiring formal submission or verification is also professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the established procedural safeguards designed to ensure the authenticity and completeness of application materials. It introduces a significant risk of misinformation and undermines the integrity of the application review. Ethically, this approach prioritizes expediency over due diligence and fairness, potentially admitting candidates based on incomplete or unverified information, which is a breach of trust with both applicants and the university. A third incorrect approach of making an exception based on the applicant's perceived potential or background, despite not meeting the stated requirements, is fundamentally flawed. This violates the core principle of merit-based admissions as defined by the entrance examination regulations. Such exceptions introduce bias and subjectivity, compromising the fairness and transparency of the process. Ethically, this is discriminatory as it favors one applicant over others based on factors not stipulated in the official regulations, thereby undermining the principle of equal opportunity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Understand and internalize the specific regulations governing the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam. 2. Objectively assess all submitted documentation against each stipulated requirement. 3. If a discrepancy or omission is identified, consult the regulations for guidance on how to proceed. This may involve seeking clarification from the applicant, referring the matter to a higher authority within the admissions committee, or adhering to a predefined protocol for handling such issues. 4. Prioritize fairness, transparency, and adherence to established rules above all else. 5. Document all decisions and the rationale behind them to ensure accountability and provide a clear record. Question 4. Research into the ethical responsibilities of students at Ihya Islamic University regarding academic assessments. A student is struggling to understand a complex concept in their coursework and is concerned about their ability to complete an upcoming assignment accurately. They have heard that classmate who has a strong grasp of the subject might be willing to share their completed assignment for review. What is the most ethically sound and academically responsible course of action for the student? Option A. Ask the classmate to explain their answers to the assignment questions without showing the completed work, hoping to gain insights into the problem-solving process. Option B. Contact an external service that offers to provide custom-written answers to assignment questions, ensuring a high grade. Option C. Politely decline the classmate's offer to share their completed assignment, and instead schedule a meeting with the instructor to seek clarification on the difficult concept and request additional study resources. Option D. Accept the classmate's offer to review their completed assignment, believing that understanding how a peer approached the problem will aid in their own learning. The correct answer is C. Politely decline the classmate's offer to share their completed assignment, and instead schedule a meeting with the instructor to seek clarification on the difficult concept and request additional study resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The challenge lies in discerning between legitimate academic support and unethical academic misconduct, requiring careful judgment to uphold the university's values and regulations. The correct approach involves a student seeking clarification and additional learning resources directly from the instructor or designated academic support services. This aligns with the Ihya Islamic University's commitment to fostering a learning environment based on honesty and diligence, as outlined in its academic integrity policies. By engaging with the instructor, the student demonstrates a proactive and ethical approach to understanding the material, seeking to overcome their difficulties through legitimate means. This respects the assessment process and upholds the principle of individual academic achievement. An incorrect approach would be to accept assistance from a peer who offers to provide answers or complete parts of the assignment. This constitutes academic misconduct, as it violates the principle of individual work and fair assessment. It undermines the learning process by bypassing the student's own effort and understanding. Furthermore, it could lead to plagiarism or collusion, both of which are explicitly prohibited by university regulations and carry severe penalties. Another incorrect approach would be to purchase answers or assignments from an external source. This is a clear violation of academic integrity and is considered a form of cheating. It not only misrepresents the student's abilities, but also exploits unethical services that compromise the value of the university's degrees. Such actions directly contravene the ethical standards expected of all students at Ihya Islamic University. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves first understanding the university's academic integrity policies thoroughly. When faced with academic challenges, students should prioritize seeking help through official channels, such as attending office hours, forming study groups for collaborative learning, not answer sharing, or utilizing university-provided tutoring services. If unsure about the permissibility of any form of assistance, it is always best to err on the side of caution and consult with the instructor or academic advisor. The guiding principle should be to ensure that all academic work submitted is a genuine reflection of the student's own knowledge and effort. Question 5. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective student at Ihya Islamic University has received a scholarship offer from an organization whose primary source of income is derived from interest-based financial services. Considering the university's commitment to Islamic financial ethics, which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the student? Option A. Accept the scholarship but donate a portion of the funds to charity to mitigate any perceived ethical compromise. Option B. Accept the scholarship and seek a religious ruling, fatwa, to confirm its permissibility after the fact. Option C. Decline the scholarship and actively seek alternative funding from sources demonstrably compliant with Islamic financial principles, such as endowments from halal businesses or zakat funds. Option D. Accept the scholarship, as the pursuit of knowledge is a primary objective, and the student is not directly involved in the organization's operations. The correct answer is D. Accept the scholarship, as the pursuit of knowledge is a primary objective and the student is not directly involved in the organization's operations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of fundamental Islamic financial principles as they relate to university admissions, specifically concerning the ethical implications of financial aid. The challenge lies in discerning the permissible sources of funding for educational purposes within an Islamic framework, distinguishing between halal, permissible, and haram, forbidden, income. A careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of knowledge does not compromise adherence to religious tenets. The correct approach involves prioritizing financial aid sources that are demonstrably halal, aligning with Islamic principles of ethical earning and expenditure. This means seeking funding from institutions or individuals whose wealth is derived from permissible activities and who are not engaged in usury, riba, or other prohibited transactions. This approach is ethically and regulatorily sound within the context of Ihya Islamic University because it upholds the university's foundational Islamic values and ensures that students are not inadvertently complicit in haram practices. Adherence to these principles is paramount for an institution dedicated to Islamic education. An incorrect approach that relies on funding from sources known to be involved in usury or other haram activities is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a direct contravention of Islamic financial law, which strictly prohibits participation in or benefit from such transactions. Accepting such aid would undermine the ethical foundation of the university and the student's own commitment to Islamic principles. Another incorrect approach that involves accepting funding without due diligence regarding its source or nature is also professionally flawed. While not actively seeking haram funds, this passive acceptance demonstrates a lack of commitment to the rigorous ethical standards expected within an Islamic educational environment. It suggests an insufficient understanding of the importance of scrutinizing financial dealings to ensure compliance with Sharia. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes financial expediency over ethical considerations, even if the source is questionable, is fundamentally at odds with the ethos of an Islamic university. The pursuit of knowledge is encouraged in Islam, but it must be undertaken through permissible means. Compromising ethical principles for financial ease would be a significant failure in professional judgment and religious observance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's ethical and regulatory framework, which in this case is rooted in Islamic finance. Applicants should proactively inquire about the permissible sources of funding and demonstrate a commitment to seeking aid that aligns with these principles. This involves a conscious effort to verify the halal nature of any financial assistance offered. Question 6. Comparative studies suggest that while students often seek to maximize their chances of success in university entrance examinations, the methods employed can vary significantly. Considering the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines of Ihya Islamic University, which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound approach for a prospective student preparing for the entrance exam? Option A. Engaging in thorough preparation using the official syllabus, recommended textbooks, and attending any preparatory workshops or information sessions organized by Ihya Islamic University. Option B. Attempting to access past examination papers through unofficial online forums, even if they are not officially released by the university. Option C. Purchasing unauthorized study materials from external sources that claim to contain leaked or highly probable questions from the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam. Option D. Actively seeking out current students or faculty members to inquire about the specific topics and question types likely to appear on the entrance examination. The correct answer is D. Actively seeking out current students or faculty members to inquire about the specific topics and question types likely to appear on the entrance examination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The challenge lies in discerning between legitimate academic support and unethical practices that could compromise the validity of the entrance examination. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of fairness, honesty, and the integrity of the Ihya Islamic University's admission process. The correct approach involves a student seeking clarification on examination content through official university channels, such as academic advisors or designated inquiry points, and preparing diligently using approved study materials. This aligns with the Ihya Islamic University's regulatory framework, which implicitly emphasizes academic honesty and fair competition. By adhering to these established procedures, the student demonstrates respect for the examination process and avoids any actions that could be construed as seeking an unfair advantage or engaging in academic misconduct. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes integrity and transparency. An incorrect approach would be to seek direct or indirect assistance from current students or faculty members regarding specific examination questions or topics not publicly disclosed. This action violates the principle of a standardized and equitable assessment, as it provides an unfair advantage to the individual. Such behavior could be deemed a breach of the Ihya Islamic University's academic integrity policy, potentially leading to disqualification from the entrance examination or other disciplinary actions. Another incorrect approach would be to purchase or obtain unauthorized study guides that claim to contain actual examination questions. This is a clear violation of academic integrity and could have severe consequences, including permanent exclusion from the university. Professionals should approach such situations by prioritizing adherence to established university policies and ethical guidelines. This involves seeking information through official channels, utilizing approved resources, and maintaining a commitment to honest and fair academic practices. When faced with ambiguity, the decision-making process should involve consulting relevant university regulations and seeking guidance from academic authorities to ensure compliance and uphold the integrity of the institution. Question 7. Compliance review shows a report alleging that a prospective student, Mr. Ahmed, was observed by a proctor to be discreetly using a mobile device during the Ihya Islamic University entrance examination. The proctor reported this observation to the examination supervisor, who then confiscated the device. The supervisor, without further consultation, immediately disqualified Mr. Ahmed from the examination and informed him of this decision. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the Ihya Islamic University administration in response to this situation, strictly adhering to its internal examination regulations and academic integrity guidelines? Option A. Uphold the immediate disqualification of Mr. Ahmed by the examination supervisor, as the proctor's observation is considered sufficient grounds for such action according to university policy. Option B. Return the confiscated device to Mr. Ahmed and allow him to retake the examination, assuming the observation was a misunderstanding and to avoid potential disputes. Option C. Forward the proctor's report to Mr. Ahmed's previous educational institution for their review and disciplinary action, as the misconduct occurred during a prior academic assessment. Option D. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged misconduct, gathering all available evidence including the confiscated device and witness statements, and present the findings to the university's Academic Integrity Committee for a decision on appropriate disciplinary action. The correct answer is D. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged misconduct, gathering all available evidence including the confiscated device and witness statements, and present the findings to the university's Academic Integrity Committee for a decision on appropriate disciplinary action. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead individuals to seek unfair advantages, making it crucial for university staff to uphold ethical standards and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to identify and address potential breaches without unfairly penalizing students. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation into the alleged misconduct, adhering strictly to the Ihya Islamic University's established examination regulations and academic integrity policies. This approach prioritizes fairness, due process, and the principle of innocent until proven guilty. By gathering all relevant evidence, including witness statements and any digital records, and then presenting these findings to the designated disciplinary committee, the university ensures that any decision is based on factual evidence and in accordance with its own internal rules. This upholds the integrity of the examination process and maintains the university's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student based on a single accusation without proper investigation. This fails to provide the student with due process and violates the principle of fairness. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the accusation altogether, which would undermine the university's commitment to academic integrity and could set a precedent for future misconduct. Furthermore, acting solely on hearsay or unsubstantiated rumors without seeking corroborating evidence is a significant ethical and regulatory failure, as it can lead to unjust outcomes and damage the trust placed in the university's disciplinary procedures. Professionals in such situations should follow a structured decision-making process. First, acknowledge and document the allegation. Second, consult the relevant university policies and examination regulations to understand the prescribed procedures for handling academic misconduct. Third, initiate a fair and impartial investigation, collecting all pertinent evidence. Fourth, present the findings to the appropriate disciplinary body for a decision. Finally, ensure that any sanctions are applied consistently and in accordance with the established regulations. Question 8. Regulatory review indicates that Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination is designed to assess a candidate's genuine academic aptitude and preparedness. A prospective student, feeling immense pressure to secure admission, is approached by an acquaintance who claims to have access to past exam papers and offers to share them for a fee. The student is also aware that some individuals have previously attempted to bribe invigilators for exam advantages. Considering the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the prospective student? Option A. Fabricate a personal emergency to request a postponement of the exam, hoping to gain more time to find alternative, albeit unethical, means of preparation. Option B. Accept the offer of past exam papers, believing that understanding the exam format is a legitimate form of preparation, and pay the acquaintance. Option C. Consider offering a bribe to an invigilator to gain an advantage during the examination, rationalizing that it is a common practice in some contexts. Option D. Politely decline the offer of past exam papers and report the acquaintance's unethical proposition to the university's admissions office, while continuing to prepare for the exam through legitimate study methods. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the offer of past exam papers and report the acquaintance's unethical proposition to the university's admissions office, while continuing to prepare for the exam through legitimate study methods. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in an entrance exam, especially for a prestigious institution like Ihya Islamic University, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the principles of honesty and meritocracy within the examination process, as mandated by the university's regulatory framework. The correct approach involves a steadfast commitment to academic integrity, recognizing that the entrance examination is designed to assess a candidate's genuine knowledge and potential. This approach prioritizes ethical conduct by refusing to engage in any form of academic dishonesty, such as seeking unauthorized assistance or attempting to gain an unfair advantage. This aligns directly with the Ihya Islamic University's entrance exam guidelines, which implicitly and explicitly prohibit cheating and uphold the value of honest effort. By adhering to these principles, the candidate demonstrates respect for the examination process and the institution's standards. An incorrect approach of seeking assistance from a current student to obtain exam questions or answers before the examination is a direct violation of academic integrity policies. This constitutes cheating and undermines the fairness of the assessment process. It not only disadvantages other candidates who are preparing honestly, but also compromises the validity of the admission process. Such an action would be considered a serious ethical breach, potentially leading to disqualification from the entrance exam and future academic opportunities at Ihya Islamic University. Another incorrect approach of attempting to bribe an invigilator to allow access to exam materials is a severe ethical and potentially legal transgression. Bribery is universally condemned in academic and professional settings and is explicitly forbidden by the Ihya Islamic University's Code of Conduct. This action not only corrupts the examination process, but also demonstrates a profound lack of integrity and respect for the institution's values. The consequences would likely extend beyond disqualification from the exam to potential legal repercussions. A third incorrect approach of fabricating personal circumstances to request a postponed exam date without genuine cause is also a form of dishonesty. While universities often have provisions for genuine emergencies, Misrepresenting one's situation to gain an advantage is unethical. This approach deceives the university administration and exploits the system designed to support students facing legitimate difficulties. It erodes trust and demonstrates a willingness to manipulate rules for personal gain, which is contrary to the ethical standards expected of Ihya Islamic University students. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Ihya Islamic University's entrance exam regulations and ethical guidelines. Candidates must internalize the importance of academic integrity and the consequences of dishonesty. When faced with a temptation or pressure to act unethically, the professional decision-maker should pause, reflect on the core values of honesty and fairness, and consider the long-term implications of their actions. Seeking guidance from trusted mentors or university advisors, if available and appropriate, can also be a valuable step. Ultimately, the decision must align with the established regulatory framework and ethical principles, prioritizing integrity over short-term gains. Question 9. Consider a scenario where a student approaches you, an administrator at Ihya Islamic University, a few days before a crucial entrance examination, expressing anxiety about the examination format and asking if they can receive a preview of the questions to better prepare. Based on the Ihya Islamic University's established examination regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately report the student to the examination board for attempting to solicit examination questions without further discussion. Option B. Inform the student that you cannot help them and advise them to seek assistance from their peers who may have more information. Option C. Politely but firmly explain that providing any preview of examination questions is strictly against Ihya Islamic University's examination regulations and could lead to severe academic penalties for both the student and anyone involved in such a disclosure. Offer to clarify the general examination format and study resources available. Option D. Agree to provide a limited preview of a few sample questions to alleviate the student's anxiety, emphasizing that this is a one-time exception. The correct answer is C. Politely but firmly explain that providing any preview of examination questions is strictly against Ihya Islamic University's examination regulations and could lead to severe academic penalties for both the student and anyone involved in such a disclosure. Offer to clarify the general examination format and study resources available. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The challenge lies in discerning whether the student's request is a genuine misunderstanding of the examination process or an attempt to circumvent established procedures for personal gain. Careful judgment is required to uphold the Ihya Islamic University's examination regulations, while also providing appropriate guidance to the student. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent communication with the student, clearly explaining the examination rules and the consequences of any violation. This approach upholds the integrity of the Ihya Islamic University's examination framework by adhering strictly to its established guidelines for assessment and academic conduct. It demonstrates a commitment to fairness and equal treatment for all students, ensuring that no individual receives an unfair advantage. This aligns with the ethical principle of upholding institutional rules and fostering an environment of academic honesty. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting the student's request without proper verification or explanation would be a failure to uphold the Ihya Islamic University's examination regulations. This would undermine the fairness of the assessment process and could set a precedent for future violations. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the student's request or providing a vague response, would fail to address the student's concern and could lead to further misunderstandings or perceived unfairness, thereby not fulfilling the duty of care expected of university staff. A third incorrect approach, which involves reporting the student for an alleged violation without first attempting to clarify the situation, could be overly punitive and fail to consider potential genuine confusion on the student's part, thus not adhering to principles of procedural fairness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, understanding the specific regulations of the Ihya Islamic University regarding examinations and student conduct. Second, actively listening to and understanding the student's request or concern. Third, clearly communicating the relevant regulations and policies to the student. Fourth, assessing the situation based on the established rules. And finally, taking appropriate action that is consistent with the university's commitment to academic integrity and fairness. Question 10. The performance metrics show that a candidate scored just below the commonly accepted threshold for the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam, but their submitted personal statement and academic transcripts indicate exceptional prior academic achievement and a strong alignment with the university's core values, which approach best upholds the principles of fair and comprehensive university admissions according to the Ihya Islamic University's regulatory framework. Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's entire application, including their personal statement and academic transcripts, to assess their overall potential and suitability for the university, considering the entrance exam score as one factor among many. Option B. Reject the candidate outright due to the entrance exam score not meeting the standard threshold. Option C. Request the candidate to retake the entrance exam immediately without considering their other application materials. Option D. Automatically admit the candidate based on their strong personal statement and transcripts, disregarding the entrance exam score entirely. Correct answer is B. Reject the candidate outright due to the entrance exam score not meeting the standard threshold. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's stated commitment to academic integrity with the practical realities of student performance and the potential for misinterpretation of data. The university's entrance exam is designed to assess a baseline of knowledge and aptitude, and the performance metrics are intended to reflect this. However, relying solely on raw performance metrics without considering contextual factors can lead to unfair or inaccurate conclusions about a candidate's suitability. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment process is both rigorous and equitable, adhering to the principles of fairness and transparency as outlined in the Ihya Islamic University's academic regulations. The correct approach involves a holistic review of the candidate's application, considering the performance metrics alongside other relevant factors such as their academic history, personal statement, and any supplementary materials. This approach aligns with the Ihya Islamic University's commitment to a comprehensive evaluation process, which aims to identify students who not only possess academic potential, but also demonstrate a genuine commitment to learning and the university's values. Regulatory guidelines for university admissions typically emphasize fairness, non-discrimination, and a thorough assessment of a candidate's overall profile, rather than a singular reliance on one data point. This comprehensive method ensures that the university selects candidates who are most likely to succeed and contribute positively to the academic community. An approach that solely focuses on achieving a specific score threshold on the entrance exam, without considering other aspects of the candidate's profile, fails to acknowledge the multifaceted nature of academic potential. This can lead to the rejection of promising candidates who may have had an off day during the exam, or whose strengths lie in areas not fully captured by a single test. Ethically, this approach is problematic as it can be perceived as arbitrary and may not accurately reflect the candidate's true capabilities. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss a candidate solely based on a slightly below-average performance metric, without investigating potential reasons for this performance or considering mitigating circumstances. This overlooks the university's ethical obligation to provide a fair opportunity for all applicants and to make informed decisions based on a complete understanding of each individual's circumstances. It also fails to adhere to the spirit of the Ihya Islamic University's admissions policy, which encourages a balanced assessment. A third incorrect approach involves making assumptions about a candidate's motivation or ability based on a single performance metric, without any further inquiry. This is a form of bias that can lead to unfair outcomes and does not reflect the professional responsibility of admissions officers to conduct thorough and objective evaluations. It is crucial to remember that entrance exams are one component of a broader assessment, and their results should be interpreted within a wider context. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured review that begins with understanding the purpose and limitations of each assessment tool. Admissions professionals should be trained to identify potential biases in data and to seek out additional information that can provide a more complete picture of an applicant. They should also be aware of and adhere to the specific regulatory framework and ethical guidelines of their institution, ensuring that all decisions are fair, transparent, and justifiable. This involves a commitment to continuous learning and a willingness to adapt assessment strategies to best serve the university's mission and the interests of its applicants. Question 11. The investigation demonstrates that an applicant for the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam has submitted a compelling personal statement detailing significant extenuating circumstances that impacted their previous academic performance. The applicant has provided some supporting documentation, but it is not fully comprehensive according to the standard requirements outlined in the university's entrance examination guidelines. The applicant is otherwise academically qualified based on their submitted transcripts. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Grant the applicant conditional admission based on the current submission, with the understanding that full documentation must be provided and approved before final enrollment. Option B. Request further comprehensive documentation from the applicant to fully substantiate the extenuating circumstances, and then proceed with a review based on the complete submission and established university entrance exam regulations. Option C. Initiate a special review process to consider the applicant's personal narrative as a primary factor for admission, overriding standard documentation requirements. Option D. Advise the applicant that their submission does not fully meet the documented requirements for the entrance exam, and proceed with a decision based on the incomplete information. The correct answer is B. Request further comprehensive documentation from the applicant to fully substantiate the extenuating circumstances, and then proceed with a review based on the complete submission and established university entrance exam regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for conflicts of interest and the need to uphold the integrity of the Ihya Islamic University's admissions process. Adherence to the university's specific entrance exam regulations and ethical guidelines is paramount. The challenge lies in balancing the applicant's personal circumstances with the university's established criteria and ensuring fairness to all candidates. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's submission, strictly adhering to the Ihya Islamic University's stated admission criteria and any specific guidelines for handling exceptional circumstances. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established rules. It ensures that decisions are made based on objective criteria and documented evidence, preventing bias and maintaining the credibility of the entrance examination process. The university's regulations, as stipulated for its entrance exam, would likely emphasize meritocracy and adherence to defined academic and personal conduct standards. An incorrect approach would be to grant special consideration based solely on the applicant's personal narrative, without verifiable evidence or a clear pathway within the university's existing regulations for such exceptions. This fails to uphold the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and could be seen as preferential treatment, undermining the integrity of the examination. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the application outright without a comprehensive review of all submitted documentation, including any supporting evidence for the exceptional circumstances. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and could lead to an unfair outcome. A third incorrect approach would be to seek informal assurances or promises from the applicant regarding future behavior or academic performance outside the established admission criteria. This bypasses the formal review process and introduces an element of subjectivity and potential for future complications. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant university regulations and ethical codes. They must then objectively assess all submitted information against these criteria. If the regulations provide for a process to handle exceptional circumstances, that process must be followed rigorously, requiring documented evidence and a clear rationale for any deviation from standard procedures. Transparency and consistency in decision-making are crucial to maintaining trust and upholding the reputation of the institution. Question 12. The analysis reveals that an applicant for the Ihya Islamic University's entrance exam has submitted documentation indicating significant financial strain, yet also presents evidence of substantial financial support from an overseas relative. The admissions committee, is concerned about the potential for misrepresentation or the applicant's long-term financial viability for their studies. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Offer the applicant a conditional admission contingent upon securing a local sponsor or scholarship, without further investigation into the existing financial evidence. Option B. Advise the applicant to withdraw their application and reapply once their financial situation has stabilized, without reviewing the submitted financial evidence. Option C. Immediately reject the application due to concerns about the applicant's financial stability and the potential for fraudulent documentation. Option D. Request a detailed explanation and supporting documentation from the applicant regarding the source and nature of the overseas financial support, while proceeding with the standard review of their academic qualifications. The correct answer is D. Request a detailed explanation and supporting documentation from the applicant regarding the source and nature of the overseas financial support, while proceeding with the standard review of their academic qualifications. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a student's personal financial situation and the university's admission policies, particularly concerning the integrity of the application process. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness, adherence to regulations, and the ethical treatment of all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's documentation, seeking clarification directly from the applicant regarding any discrepancies, and applying the Ihya Islamic University's admission regulations consistently. This approach upholds the principle of fairness by giving the applicant an opportunity to explain their situation and ensuring that the admission decision is based on verifiable information and established criteria. It aligns with the ethical duty to treat all applicants equitably and to maintain the integrity of the university's admission process, as mandated by the university's internal guidelines and any relevant educational accreditation standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the application based on the initial observation of financial hardship without seeking further information. This fails to acknowledge that financial difficulties can be temporary or can be managed through legitimate means, and it bypasses the opportunity for the applicant to provide context or evidence. Ethically, this is unfair and potentially discriminatory. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the application without verifying the source of funds or the applicant's ability to meet future financial obligations, which could compromise the university's financial stability and the student's academic success. This disregards the university's responsibility to ensure that admitted students are genuinely capable of fulfilling their financial commitments. A third incorrect approach would be to offer preferential treatment or special conditions not available to other applicants, as this violates the principle of equal opportunity and could lead to accusations of bias or favoritism, undermining the credibility of the admission process. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes due diligence, transparency, and adherence to established policies. This involves gathering all relevant facts, providing the applicant with a clear understanding of the requirements and any perceived issues, and allowing them a reasonable opportunity to respond. Decisions should be documented, justifiable, and consistent with the university's stated admission criteria and ethical guidelines. Question 13. Strategic planning requires the Ihya Islamic University to secure additional funding for its expansion projects. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the university's commitment to Islamic financial principles and regulatory compliance? Option A. Prioritizing funding from sources that are demonstrably Sharia compliant, such as ethical investment funds, waqf, endowment contribution, or partnerships with Islamic financial institutions, even if initial returns are moderate. Option B. Accepting a significant donation from a prominent business conglomerate known for its involvement in interest-based lending and other non-permissible activities, provided the donation is substantial. Option C. Engaging in complex, derivative-based financial products that are commonly used in conventional finance, assuming they can be structured to appear compliant without extensive Sharia review. Option D. Seeking investment from a diversified portfolio of conventional financial instruments that offer the highest projected returns, with a focus on maximizing capital growth. The correct answer is D. Seeking investment from a diversified portfolio of conventional financial instruments that offer the highest projected returns, with a focus on maximizing capital growth. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for funding with the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations of an Islamic financial institution. The university's entrance exam context implies a need for adherence to principles that are both academically sound and aligned with Islamic finance ethics. The challenge lies in identifying funding sources that are permissible under Sharia and do not compromise the institution's integrity or its educational mission. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any funding arrangement aligns with the university's values and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves prioritizing funding sources that are explicitly Sharia compliant and align with the ethical principles of Islamic finance. This means seeking investments or donations that are free from riba, interest, gharar, excessive uncertainty, maisir gambling, and involve permissible underlying assets or activities. Such an approach ensures that the university's operations and growth are built on a foundation of ethical and regulatory soundness, fostering trust among stakeholders and upholding the institution's Islamic identity. This aligns with the overarching principles of Islamic finance, which emphasize social responsibility, fairness, and ethical conduct. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the highest financial return without considering Sharia compliance would be ethically and regulatorily unsound. This would violate the core tenets of Islamic finance and potentially expose the university to prohibited financial activities, leading to reputational damage and a breach of trust with its community. Another incorrect approach that involves accepting funding from sources with questionable ethical practices or involvement in impermissible industries, e.g., conventional banking with interest, alcohol, pork production, would also be a failure. This would contradict the Islamic principles of halal, permissible earnings, and could undermine the educational environment by associating the university with activities deemed haram, forbidden. A further incorrect approach that involves engaging in complex, opaque financial instruments without thorough Sharia scrutiny could lead to unintended violations of Islamic financial principles. While appearing sophisticated, such methods might inadvertently involve elements of gharar or riba, thus failing to meet the ethical and regulatory standards expected of an Islamic institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder consultation, including Sharia scholars, financial experts, and university leadership. A thorough due diligence process for all potential funding sources is essential, ensuring alignment with the university's mission, values, and the specific regulatory framework governing Islamic financial institutions in its jurisdiction. Prioritizing ethical and Sharia compliance over purely financial gains is paramount. Question 14. To address the challenge of preparing for an upcoming assignment while feeling uncertain about the material and the university's specific citation requirements, a student at Ihya Islamic University considers several options to ensure a high-quality submission. Which of the following actions best reflects adherence to academic integrity and university guidelines? Option A. Consulting with a professor or academic advisor to understand the assignment expectations and proper citation methods, and utilizing university-provided academic support resources. Option B. Hiring a freelance writer to complete the assignment based on the provided prompt and requirements. Option C. Searching for similar assignments online and adapting content from those sources to incorporate into their own work, ensuring minor changes are made. Option D. Submitting a draft of the assignment that is largely based on information found in a textbook, without explicitly citing the source of every idea. The correct answer is A. Consulting with a professor or academic advisor to understand the assignment expectations and proper citation methods, and utilizing university-provided academic support resources. Explanation: the scenario presents a challenge for an aspiring student at Ihya Islamic University regarding the ethical implications of academic integrity and the proper use of university resources. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire to succeed with the obligation to adhere to Islamic ethical principles and university regulations. This requires careful judgment to distinguish between legitimate academic assistance and academic misconduct. The correct approach involves seeking clarification and guidance from the university's designated academic support services or faculty advisors. This aligns with the university's commitment to fostering an environment of honesty and integrity, as expected within an Islamic educational institution. Specifically, seeking help through official channels demonstrates respect for the academic process and adherence to the university's academic integrity policy, which likely prohibits plagiarism and unauthorized assistance. This approach upholds the Islamic principle of seeking knowledge ethically and responsibly. An incorrect approach would be to directly copy or paraphrase material from external sources without proper attribution, even if the intent is to improve the quality of the work. This constitutes plagiarism, a serious academic offense that violates the trust placed in students and contravenes Islamic teachings on honesty and fairness. Another incorrect approach would be to pay an external party to complete the assignment. This not only constitutes plagiarism, but also involves deception and the misuse of financial resources for academic dishonesty, which is fundamentally against Islamic ethical principles and university regulations. A third incorrect approach would be to present work that is not one's own as original, regardless of whether external help was sought. This misrepresentation of one's abilities and effort undermines the purpose of education and violates the principles of accountability and truthfulness. Professionals in academic settings should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to established rules. This involves understanding the university's academic integrity policy, identifying potential ethical dilemmas, seeking clarification from appropriate authorities when unsure, and acting with honesty and transparency in all academic endeavors. Question 15. The review process indicates that a prospective student for Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination has presented a compelling personal hardship narrative just prior to the scheduled examination, requesting a postponement or alternative testing arrangement. The examination committee must decide how to proceed while upholding the university's commitment to academic integrity and equitable assessment. Which of the following actions best aligns with the established regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for Ihya Islamic University's entrance examinations? Option A. Discuss the student's personal situation with other members of the examination committee and potentially with other applicants to gauge community sentiment on the matter. Option B. Request official documentation from the student to verify the nature and severity of the hardship and consult the university's established policy on examination accommodations for extenuating circumstances before making a decision. Option C. Inform the student that all candidates must adhere to the scheduled examination, as no exceptions can be made to maintain fairness for all applicants. Option D. Immediately grant the student a postponed examination date and a private testing session, as the narrative suggests significant distress. The correct answer is D. Immediately grant the student a postponed examination date and a private testing session, as the narrative suggests significant distress. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between upholding academic integrity and responding to a student's personal circumstances. The university entrance exam for Ihya Islamic University operates under a specific regulatory framework that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established examination protocols. The challenge lies in balancing compassion for a student facing hardship with the need to maintain the integrity of the admission process and ensure all candidates are assessed equitably. The correct approach involves a structured, transparent, and documented process that adheres to Ihya Islamic University's examination regulations. This approach prioritizes verifying the student's claim through official channels and, if substantiated, exploring alternative arrangements that do not compromise the examination's validity or fairness to other candidates. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and due process, ensuring that any deviation from standard procedure is justified, documented, and applied consistently. Specifically, Ihya Islamic University's examination guidelines likely mandate that all candidates must complete the examination under the same conditions, unless explicit, pre-approved accommodations are in place for documented disabilities or exceptional circumstances. The university's internal policies would also dictate the process for handling such requests, emphasizing impartiality and evidence-based decision-making. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting a special arrangement without verification fails to uphold the principle of fairness to other applicants who have prepared under standard conditions. This could be seen as preferential treatment, undermining the credibility of the examination. Another incorrect approach that of outright refusal without exploring any potential for accommodation might overlook the university's ethical obligation to consider extenuating circumstances and could lead to a perception of inflexibility or lack of empathy, potentially violating broader Islamic principles of compassion and justice. A third incorrect approach, which involves discussing the student's personal situation with other students, represents a severe breach of confidentiality and professional ethics, damaging trust and potentially leading to reputational harm for the university. Professionals in this situation should follow a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulations governing the examination. This involves consulting the Ihya Islamic University's official examination policies and procedures. The next step is to gather all necessary information and documentation related to the student's request, ensuring it is handled with confidentiality. Based on the verified information and university policy, a decision should be made regarding potential accommodations, always prioritizing fairness and integrity. If an accommodation is granted, it must be clearly documented and communicated to all relevant parties. If the request cannot be accommodated, a clear and empathetic explanation should be provided to the student, referencing the relevant policies. Question 16. What factors determine an applicant's suitability for admission into the Ihya Islamic University's Islamic finance program, considering the university's commitment to Sharia compliance and ethical financial practices? Option A. The applicant's overall academic performance across all subjects, irrespective of their relevance to Islamic finance. Option B. The applicant's ability to secure a recommendation from a prominent figure, regardless of their academic or ethical background. Option C. The applicant's participation in non-academic extracurricular activities and their social network. Option D. The applicant's foundational understanding of Islamic economic principles, demonstrated interest in ethical finance, and alignment with Islamic values. The correct answer is D. The applicant's foundational understanding of Islamic economic principles, demonstrated interest in ethical finance, and alignment with Islamic values. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles of Islamic finance as taught at Ihya Islamic University, specifically in the context of its entrance examination. The challenge lies in discerning which factors are most critical for admission, reflecting the university's academic priorities and its commitment to upholding Islamic financial ethics. A careful judgment is required to prioritize academic preparedness and ethical alignment over other potential, but less relevant, considerations for university admission. The correct approach involves identifying factors that directly relate to an applicant's potential to succeed in an Islamic finance program and contribute to the university's ethos. This includes assessing their foundational knowledge of Islamic economic principles, their demonstrated interest in the field, and their ethical disposition, which are all core tenets of Islamic finance. Regulatory and ethical justification stems from the university's mission to educate students in a field that is intrinsically linked to Islamic values and Sharia compliance. Therefore, an assessment that prioritizes these elements aligns with the university's educational objectives and the ethical framework of Islamic finance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on general academic achievement without regard for the specific Islamic finance context fails to recognize the specialized nature of the program. This approach overlooks the need for an applicant to possess an understanding of or a strong inclination towards Islamic economic principles, which are fundamental to the curriculum. Ethically, it is a disservice to both the applicant and the university to admit students who may not be adequately prepared for or aligned with the program's core values. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes extracurricular activities unrelated to finance or Islamic studies or personal connections is also professionally unacceptable. Such an approach disregards the academic rigor and the specific ethical and intellectual requirements of studying Islamic finance. It introduces an element of arbitrariness and potential bias, undermining the principle of merit-based admission and the university's commitment to fostering a knowledgeable and ethically grounded student body. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the program's objectives and the university's mission. Admissions committees must establish criteria that are directly relevant to the field of study and the institution's values. This involves developing assessment tools that can effectively measure an applicant's foundational knowledge, aptitude, and ethical alignment. A structured and transparent evaluation process, focused on these key determinants, ensures fairness and upholds the academic integrity of the institution. Question 17. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of activity that may suggest a student is circumventing academic integrity policies. Option A. Disregard the monitoring system's output as it may be prone to misinterpretation and avoid potential conflict. Option B. Immediately approach the student directly to discuss the observed activity and seek an explanation. Option C. Review the monitoring system's data thoroughly. Consult the Ihya Islamic University's academic integrity policy and relevant ethical guidelines, and report any confirmed potential violations through the appropriate university channels for formal investigation. Option D. Share the details of the monitoring system's output with other students to gauge their opinions on the observed activity. The correct answer is C. Review the monitoring system's data thoroughly, consult the Ihya Islamic University's academic integrity policy and relevant ethical guidelines, and report any confirmed potential violations through the appropriate university channels for formal investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret and act upon information from a monitoring system that may indicate a breach of ethical conduct or university policy. The core of the challenge lies in discerning the appropriate response when faced with potentially sensitive or confidential information, balancing the need for oversight with the principles of fairness and due process. Careful judgment is required to avoid premature accusations, protect individual privacy, and ensure that any actions taken are in line with the Ihya Islamic University's established regulatory framework and ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based process. It begins with a thorough review of the monitoring system's output to understand the nature and extent of the potential issue. This is followed by consulting the relevant Ihya Islamic University regulations and ethical codes to determine if a violation has occurred. If a potential violation is identified, the next step is to report the findings through the designated internal channels, such as the Academic Integrity Committee or the relevant department head, allowing for a formal investigation. This approach upholds the principles of due process, ensures that investigations are conducted by authorized personnel, and maintains the integrity of the university's disciplinary procedures. It aligns with the university's commitment to a fair and transparent environment for all students and staff. An incorrect approach of immediately confronting the individual without proper investigation or consultation with university authorities is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses established procedures and could lead to misunderstandings, false accusations, and damage to the individual's reputation. It also undermines the authority of the university's disciplinary bodies and fails to adhere to the principles of natural justice, which are implicitly embedded within any sound regulatory framework. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the monitoring system's output due to a desire to avoid conflict or potential repercussions is also professionally unsound. This constitutes a failure to uphold one's responsibilities in maintaining academic integrity and can allow breaches of policy or ethical conduct to go unaddressed, potentially harming the wider university community. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the importance of the monitoring system as a tool for ensuring a responsible academic environment. A third incorrect approach of sharing the monitoring system's output with colleagues or other unauthorized individuals before a formal investigation is a serious breach of confidentiality and ethical conduct. This can lead to gossip, prejudice, and a violation of the privacy rights of the individual being monitored. It also compromises the integrity of any subsequent investigation by potentially influencing opinions or creating a biased environment. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a commitment to understanding and applying the Ihya Islamic University's specific regulations and ethical guidelines. It requires a methodical approach to information gathering, objective analysis, and adherence to established reporting protocols. Professionals should always prioritize fairness, confidentiality, and due process, ensuring that their actions are guided by the university's commitment to academic excellence and ethical conduct. Question 18. Strategic planning requires the Ihya Islamic University's admissions committee to consider various factors when developing its enrollment targets. A prominent donor expresses a strong desire for their relative, who has met the minimum academic requirements but is not among the top-ranked applicants, to be admitted to a highly competitive program. The committee must decide how to handle this request while upholding the university's commitment to academic excellence and fair admission practices as outlined in its internal regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with best practice and the university's ethical framework? Option A. Inform the donor that their relative's admission is guaranteed due to the donor's significant contributions to the university. Option B. Advise the donor that while the university values their support, admission is solely based on academic merit, and the relative will be considered alongside all other applicants without any special treatment. Option C. Evaluate the donor's relative strictly according to the established admission criteria and the university's published selection process, ensuring they meet the same standards as all other applicants, and communicate the outcome transparently. Option D. Create a special review process for the donor's relative, giving their application preferential consideration outside the standard evaluation framework. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the donor's relative strictly according to the established admission criteria and the university's published selection process, ensuring they meet the same standards as all other applicants, and communicate the outcome transparently. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of ensuring fair and transparent admission processes. As governed by Ihya Islamic University's internal regulations and broader Islamic principles of justice and merit, the professional challenge lies in navigating potential conflicts between donor influence and the integrity of academic admissions. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's reputation and its commitment to academic excellence. The correct approach involves prioritizing the established admission criteria and the university's stated policies, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated based on merit and suitability for the program, regardless of external pressures. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and impartiality, which are foundational in Islamic jurisprudence and are implicitly or explicitly embedded in university governance frameworks. By adhering strictly to the defined academic and ethical standards, the university upholds its commitment to meritocracy and avoids any perception of favoritism or corruption, thereby safeguarding its institutional integrity. An incorrect approach that involves accepting the donor's request without rigorous evaluation would represent a significant ethical failure. This would undermine the principle of meritocracy, potentially admitting less qualified students and compromising the academic standards of the university. It also creates a dangerous precedent, suggesting that influence can override established procedures, which is contrary to principles of good governance and Islamic ethics emphasizing justice and accountability. Another incorrect approach, that of creating a separate, less stringent evaluation process for the donor's nominees, would also be ethically unsound. This would introduce an element of unfairness and discrimination, violating the principle that all applicants should be judged by the same standards. Such a practice would erode trust in the admission system and could lead to legal or reputational damage for the university. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with external influence, professionals should first consult these established frameworks. If there is ambiguity or a potential conflict, seeking guidance from senior management or an ethics committee is crucial. The decision must always be grounded in principles of fairness, transparency, and academic integrity, ensuring that the university's long-term strategic goals are pursued without compromising its core values. Question 19. The assessment process reveals that a prospective student applying for admission to Ihya Islamic University has submitted a request for a modified examination format for the entrance exam, citing a recently diagnosed learning difficulty. The university's admissions committee is tasked with evaluating this request. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately approve the modified examination format based on the student's self-reported diagnosis to ensure inclusivity. Option B. Ask a senior faculty member outside the admissions committee for their personal opinion on whether to grant the accommodation. Option C. Initiate a formal review process to assess the student's request against the university's established policies for examination accommodations, requiring appropriate supporting documentation. Option D. Deny the request outright, stating that the entrance examination format is standardized for all applicants. The correct answer is A. Immediately approve the modified examination format based on the student's self-reported diagnosis to ensure inclusivity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for accommodation and the university's commitment to maintaining the integrity and fairness of its entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to balance empathy with adherence to established regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the student's request against the Ihya Islamic University's established policies for examination accommodations. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it prioritizes fairness and equity for all candidates. By adhering to documented procedures, the university ensures that any accommodations granted are consistent, justifiable, and do not compromise the validity of the assessment. This aligns with the principles of good governance and transparent admissions processes expected of an educational institution. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting the accommodation without proper verification fails to uphold the principle of fairness to other applicants who did not require or request similar accommodations. It also risks setting a precedent that could be exploited, undermining the examination's credibility. This approach bypasses established policy, which is a regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the request outright without any form of review or consideration, demonstrates a lack of empathy and potentially violates ethical obligations to consider individual circumstances within the bounds of policy. This can lead to accusations of bias or discrimination, and fails to engage in a reasonable assessment of the student's needs. A further incorrect approach, which is to seek informal advice from colleagues outside the designated admissions committee or policymaking body, introduces an element of subjectivity and potential inconsistency into the decision-making process. This circumvents the formal governance structure and can lead to decisions that are not aligned with the university's official regulations or best practices for admissions. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Understanding the specific request and the underlying reasons. 2. Consulting the relevant university policies and guidelines for examination accommodations. 3. Gathering any necessary supporting documentation from the applicant. 4. Convening the appropriate committee or designated personnel for a formal review. 5. Making a decision based on policy, evidence, and ethical considerations. 6. Documenting the decision and the rationale thoroughly. Question 20. Strategic planning requires a proactive and principled approach to managing the Ihya Islamic University's entrance examination process. A prospective student, citing a sudden and documented medical condition, requests a modified examination format on the day of the entrance test, which was not requested during the standard application period. What is the most appropriate course of action for the University Admissions Committee to ensure adherence to its regulatory framework and ethical standards? Option A. Immediately approve the modified examination format based on the student's medical documentation to demonstrate compassion and avoid delaying the student's admission process. Option B. Refer the student to the university's general student support services for future academic accommodation, while proceeding with the entrance examination as scheduled without modification. Option C. Review the student's request against the specific provisions for special accommodations outlined in the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam regulations, consult with relevant university officials if necessary, and make a documented decision based on policy. Option D. Grant the modified examination format as a one-time exception to support the student, and then subsequently update the entrance exam regulations to include such provisions for future applicants. The correct answer is A. Immediately approve the modified examination format based on the student's medical documentation to demonstrate compassion and avoid delaying the student's admission process. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate needs of a student with the long-term integrity of the Ihya Islamic University's admission process, as governed by its internal regulations and the broader ethical principles of academic institutions. The university's entrance exam framework emphasizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established procedures. The challenge lies in discerning between a genuine need for accommodation and an attempt to circumvent the standard assessment. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the student's request against the university's established policies for special accommodations during entrance examinations. This requires consulting the official Ihya Islamic University entrance exam guidelines, which would likely outline specific criteria and procedures for handling such requests. The justification for this approach is rooted in upholding the principle of equal opportunity while ensuring the validity and fairness of the examination for all candidates. It demonstrates a commitment to due process and adherence to the university's own regulatory framework. An incorrect approach would be to grant the accommodation without proper verification or documentation. This fails to uphold the university's internal regulations, which are designed to ensure a standardized and equitable testing environment. Such an action could be perceived as preferential treatment, undermining the credibility of the entrance examination and potentially creating grounds for future challenges from other applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the request outright, without considering the student's circumstances or the university's policies on accommodations. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to follow established procedures, potentially violating ethical principles of fairness and support for students facing genuine challenges. It also neglects the university's responsibility to provide reasonable accommodations where appropriate, as likely stipulated in its internal guidelines. A further incorrect approach would be to seek informal advice from colleagues without consulting the official Ihya Islamic University entrance exam regulations. This bypasses the established governance structure and risks making a decision based on incomplete or potentially biased information, rather than on the university's defined policies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the core issue, a request for accommodation during an entrance exam. 2. Consulting the relevant internal regulatory framework, the Ihya Islamic University entrance exam guidelines. 3. Evaluating the request against established criteria within those guidelines. 4. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale. 5. Communicating the decision clearly and respectfully to the applicant.